Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. We are a little ahead of time, so we wanted to do would you rather this or that question. And the question we have prepared today is, would you rather have full control over your dreams or never have to sleep at all? Yeah, so if you are viewing, feel free to let us know as well. Would love to hear your thoughts. But before that, we have Sue, Shang, and Mashal joining us. So let's start off with Sue. What would you rather have and why?
I like sleeping, so I want to have full control over my dreams. But I don't like the nightmare. So when I'm having a dream about like ghosts chasing after me or something, then like I want to wake up early. So yeah, I don't run away from the ghost. I go to the ghost and then kill me faster. So I will wake up. Yeah.
Okay, so you would rather have full control of your dreams
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't have nightmares.
Yeah.
But if you don't even sleep, then you wouldn't need to control your dreams.
But I like sleeping, like when I come back from the walk or I just want to close my eye. Five
Okay,
or 10 minutes is okay.
okay, I get where you're coming from. Yeah, what about Shang Yi? Shang Yi, what would you rather do?
For me, it's the same as well. So, I mean, you still have to sleep, right? So naturally, my answer is have full control over your dreams. So you can imagine in your dreams, you can design, you can build anything you want, and then when you wake up, you can turn it into reality, right? So yeah,
Wow.
ah, so that's it.
Okay, so
You
what would
still
you want to dream about?
depends on if because now COVID, right? So cannot go anywhere. So imagine you can close your eyes, then you're at the airport somewhere, flying out to a different
Oh,
country, and the
oh
next day you fly
wow.
somewhere else.
Okay,
Right.
okay, I see. So imaginative.
Unfortunately, I don't have those kind of dreams in real life, so still hoping.
Yeah, hopefully you will get to travel soon. And you can see the scenery instead of just in our dreams. Marshall, what about you?
For me, honestly, having full control over my dreams sounds a bit scary, like very Inceptionish. It's like the movie Inception. I mean, so I'd rather not have to go to sleep. I mean, I would want more time in a day. So yeah.
Okay, so instead of like 16 hours of work, you can work for 24 hours.
No, I don't want to work for 24 hours, but I just want more time in
If
a day.
if your boss is watching, that's some
No, I
brownie
told my
points.
boss specifically not to watch because then I get in my head if I know someone at work is watching. So yeah, so I specifically told her not to watch.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we have a couple of comments from the audience. I'm just gonna flash them up on screen. Tura says, "How about daydream?" I guess that works, but yeah, I think Shang-Yi would still want to control his daydream. And Wei Yuan says, he doesn't want to sleep, not enough time in a day.
Yeah, same. I have the same stance. So yeah.
Ah, interesting. I love sleep, so I think I would go with Shang-Yi on this. I would want to control what I dream about. Yeah, that would be really fun. Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing with us what you think. Yeah, so while we start our session, I'm just gonna move the speakers to the backstage. I'll see everyone shortly. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today on a Thursday evening. And I'm Jiaxing from the Google Developer Relations team looking after our developer and startup communities in Southeast Asia. Thank you for joining La Kopi, and we hope everyone is keeping safe and well wherever you're tuning in from. Do comment in the live chat to let us know where you're joining us from. And Google Developer Space is a home for developers and startups from around the region to learn and connect with one another. We want to empower and connect the community to our people, programs, network, and technologies. And La Kopi at Developer Space is a monthly open mic night for the developer community to share about their projects. Every month, a tech team is selected and developers submit their topic to be shared with the community. Today, our topic is mobile development. And we are super excited to have 3 speakers with us. 2 of them, Mashal and Sue, they are graduates of our Google's Women Developer Academy, and they will be sharing about their projects built on Android, Flutter, and Shang will be sharing about his project using Firebase. So without further ado, let me introduce today's speaker. The first speaker we have today with us is Mashal. She's an Android developer from Pakistan with over a year of experience building Android apps in Kotlin. She's currently employed as a software engineer at GudangAda, an e-commerce B2B marketplace. Mashal is an active member of GDG Islamabad and has hosted several developer meetups in her area. She believes that digital literacy is extremely important to keep up with today's modern society, and she loves to serve as an advocate for Google Tech, especially Android, within her local community. So we are really looking forward to your project. Mashal, take it away.
Hi guys, thank you for the elaborate introduction, Jashin. So I'm Mashal, I'm an Android engineer at GudangAda, and the topic of my session is navigation within Android. So what is navigation? When we talk about navigation, what we're referring to is moving from one screen to another. Before navigation component, this was handled manually by the developer through either intents in case of activities and through fragment transactions for fragments. This would create a lot of inconsistencies within the application because the developer was supposed to manually handle the navigation as well as like the back button of the device, which would and the up button in the action bar, which would create a lot of inconsistency. So so what is navigation component and what does it do? Navigation component automates all of this for us. We don't need to handle navigation or like the toolbar navigation ourselves. We just have to identify different destinations within the app or different screens within the app, then the actions that would take us from one destination to another, and simply add that code that connects the user interaction, like let's say a button click with the navigation. This is how compact the code becomes with navigation component. So here's like, the top level overview of the navigation component. One, it is a collection of libraries, tooling, and plugins that simplify Android navigation for us. It basically provides a map for all the navigation present in the app, highlighting the destinations as well as the action that takes us from one destination to another. It also handles backstack for the fragments itself. That is, when we navigate from one fragment to another, we don't have to worry about the previous fragment. Nav component automatically handles all of this for us. It also handles fragment transactions, which is as in when we identify a transaction from one destination to another. It sorry, we just so it automatically handles the navigation from one destination to another. We just have to identify the destination we want to go to in the graph, and then simply call that action in our code. It also handles type-safe argument passing, as in when we move from one fragment to another, we can identify or send data from one fragment to another. And it also provides us with type safety, which means that and by type safety, what we mean is that the compiler will validate types while compiling and throw an error if you assign the wrong type to a variable. It also allows us to access a deeper part of the application from outside, which is called deep linking. And this is something we're going to be discussing in the later part of the session. And finally, it centralizes and visualizes navigation related information and puts it in one central location in the code. So when we talk about navigation component, it's important to understand that there are 3 parts working together in harmony. So the 3 parts are navigation graph, nav host fragment, and nav controller. And it's important to understand how they sort of all link to each other to make the navigation actually occur within the code. So this is the navigation graph, which is an XML file. It contains both a design view and an editor and centralizes all the information related to navigation and basically provides a map of your application. Here, you can add fragments and activities in the NavGraph, which are called destination, as in they're the places you can navigate to and from. Then the arrows over here are called actions, which is a path basically a user can take to navigate from one screen to another. The action lets you define stuff like arguments you want to pass while navigating. And also, this is the action that you trigger when you want to navigation to actually happen. Next up, we have a nav host fragment, which is a container for fragments, or it is an area or host within the layout for self-contained navigation to occur, which in a way, what we're trying to say here is that it's basically an empty space or an holder where we want to show or display our fragments. So nav host fragment is basically is what swaps in and out different destinations included in the nav graph. So when you navigate from one destination to another, Nav Controller swaps the current destination with the new one. So here, it's important to note that the default nav host fragment ensures that the system back button is intercepted correctly, and the nav graph attribute is what links nav host fragment with the navigation graph. Next, lastly, the third part of the navigation component is Nav Controller. This is what does most of the work behind the scenes. It contains the logic we need to swap destinations in and out of the nav host fragment. Each nav host fragment has a nav controller that we use in our code, and this is where the navigation actually happens. When we write this code, what we're doing is we're pointing towards the action and instructing the nav controller to swap the current fragment with the one mentioned in the action. So that's pretty much it about the navigation component itself. So when we talk about navigating from one component, one destination to another, we probably want to pass some data or arguments as part of it. So for instance, let's say we navigate from a product listing screen to a product detail screen. We would probably want to pass a product ID as part of the argument, so the detail screen would know which product's information to fetch. So data passing is actually good and preferred because then we don't have to have global data or share data just so two destinations could have access to it. And it also encapsulates our data, which means that when we pass data from one fragment to another, nothing outside of that scope has access to it. So navigation, the component that allows data passing is called safe Args. So what exactly is safe Args? It is a Gradle plugin that offers a neater way to pass data from one fragment to another, and it automatically generates the code for us to deal with bundles. So we don't have to write the tedious code for bundles that we used to previously because Safe Args automatically does this for us. It also provides us with type safety, which we discussed in the which we just discussed, which means that the destination fragment knows what sort of data type to expect. For instance, let's say if you have declared a type data type, let's say Boolean, and you try to pass string in the argument, the compiler would throw you an error. So to declare an argument in the NavGraph, this is how it's done. You need to define 3 parameters. First is the name of the argument that we will use in our code to access it. Then its type. For instance, the type over here is integer, but it could also be a custom parcelable type, or it could even be an enum class. Then its default value as well. Default value is the value of the argument when no argument is passed. This is obviously optional, not mandatory. And lastly, nav component also gives us the liberty to make an argument type nullable. So to send and retrieve arguments, this is how it's done. You define directions, which is the action you're going to take, and send the data as part of the method argument. And then on the other side, as in the destination fragment, you can retrieve that argument through NavArgs. This is how easy and simple it is to send data and send and retrieve data from using safe Args. So lastly, the last component of our session is deep linking. What is deep linking? So deep linking is basically being able to access a deeper part of the application without having to clicking through all the fragments in the hierarchy to reach that destination. It's important. So basically, the launcher icon is not the only way to access an Android app. I mean, we have, let's say, notifications, we have app widgets, we have web URLs that take us directly into the specific screen within the app. So we have two types of deep links. One is implicit deep links, and the other is explicit deep links. So implicit deep links are deep links that always take you to the same static destination within the application. That is, every time you click on, let's say, a shortcut, it would always take you to the same destination. Then we also have explicit deep links, which is something that uses a pending intent to get the data present in the deep link and then decide what destination to navigate to. So wrapping up, this is pretty much it for my presentation. We talked about what navigation component is. It's three parts, which is nav host fragment, navigation graph, and nav controller. Then we talked about how navigation component centralizes all the navigation related information and how to pass data through safe arcs. Lastly, we also talked about deep linking. So this is pretty much it from my side. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope this was useful for you. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Nice. Thanks, Mashal. Yeah, if you have any questions regarding the presentation, feel free to leave it in our comments and we will get to them. So let's go through one of the questions we got from registration first. So someone asked whether it's bad practice to have more than one navigation graph.
I wouldn't say it's a bad practice because if anything, we are also using multiple navigation graphs in the current project I'm working on at work. But I think different or using multiple graphs or nested graphs are actually useful to organize and like reuse different sections of the app's UI. So I think, yeah, it's not a bad practice at all. And if anything, it's actually good to have multiple nav graphs to sort of like streamline and unify things. Yeah.
Yep.
Organize, not unify, but yeah.
Yep, I think that's a really clear answer. Hope you are tuning in, whoever asked that question. Yep, so I think, yeah, if you have any more questions, feel free to leave it in our comments and Mashal will get back to it later on. Yep, thank you so much for your presentation, Mashal.
Thank you for having me.
And moving on, we will introduce our second speaker for today. So Sue is also a graduate from a Women Developer Academy program, and she's passionate about building mobile apps to achieve easier and better lifestyle in our everyday lives. She has been working as a mobile developer for over 6 years, working with Android and Flutter. So today she'll be going through how you can use Flutter widgets to create responsive UI for different screen sizes. And we will also explore how you can use Orientation Builder to easily handle portrait and landscape orientations. The stage is yours, Sue.
Thank you, Jason, for your introduction. Hello, everyone. The topic I chose to present today is handling various screen sizes with Flutter in Android and iOS. My name is Su Thwe, and I'm working as a senior Android developer in Singapore based Korean. Although I'm working as an Android developer, I learned Flutter and fallen in love with it, so I continue learning it in my spare time. I have been working as a mobile developer for 6 years with Android and Flutter. When working with Flutter, we need to touch on both Android and iOS. Our app should be able to have the same look and feel for both operating systems. Even if it's in the same OS, if the device resolution are different, then UI will be shown differently. Today, I'm going to talk about how to use Flutter widget for responsive UI for different screen size and handling portrait and landscape orientation. The first one is responsive UI for different screen size. Flutter keeps expanding its cross-platform support by including web, Linux, Windows, and recently Mac OS. These are some of widgets in Flutter that especially come in handy for responsive design. Media query, layout beta, orientation beta, save area, aspect ratio, flexible, expanded, fractionally sized box. Today I won't be explaining all of them, but I will talk about most of them which I often use in Flutter. The first one is Media Query. Media Query is a great widget to make your app responsive across devices with different screen size. The Media Query object itself doesn't include much except the Media Query data property. The Media Query data object returns information about the app's window. In a mobile app, this would correspond to your device screen. The screen size and orientation can be obtained by accessing its property. So in this example, you can see if we want the screen width, then we can call it like media query dot of context dot size dot width. If we want the screen height, then we can call media query dot height. And same for the orientation, we just need to call the media query dot orientation. Based on the width, height, and orientation of the devices, we can control our responsive UI. What if we want our widget to cover only half of the screen? We can do it like this. We can call the media query dot size dot width divided by 2. Then we will get the half of the screen width. If we want the 30% of the screen width, then we can call media query dot size dot width into 0.3. This is a full code of Flutter to get this screen. So this screen has the two containers. The first one is the blue container, which has the 30% of screen height and 100% screen width. And another one is responsive button. So inside the first children object, we will call the media query dot size dot width for the 100% screen width, and for the height, media query dot height into 0.3. So that we can get the 30% of the screen height, and add the color stop blue to the color. And inside the child widget, we will add our container. For the button, we will call the media query dot size dot width to get the 100% width, and then add stamp button. And inside the child widget, we can add the raise button widget. So this was how we used media query. Another widget is save area. While designing the layout of widget, we consider different types of devices and their preoccupying constraint of screen like status bar, notch, navigation bar, etc. As you can see in the photo, save area makes UI dynamic and adaptive to devices component. It is basically a button widget. Internally, save area uses media query to check the dimension of the display screen and include extra button if needed. This is how I normally use save area. It will check save area in all dimensions. So we can simply wrap the save area inside the body widget. And also, you can decide whether to avoid intrusions in a particular direction by changing the Boolean value to true or false. So if we don't want the left side of the save area, then we can add the false in it. That's all for the save area. The another widget to achieve responsive UI is fractionally sized box. This is great if you need to support different screens or parent widget. So in this example, we will call the fractionally sized box inside the child widget, and we want the 70% of the parent container size, so we can add the 0.7 to the width factor. This is very easy to use, right? Expanded widget is a widget that expands a child inside a row or a column. So it needs to be used inside a row or a column widget to work properly. It takes up all the available space along its main axis. If all the widgets are wrapped around expanded widget inside a row or column, then space will be divided equally. Flutter widget is basically the same as the expanded widget, but there is a slight difference which makes flexible widget, as the name suggests, flexible to use. Let's find out what is different between them. This is a normal row widget with 3 containers, and we have the container 1, container 2, and container 3 here. I will explain how expanded and flexible are working by using this example. Expanded widget control its child's flexibility to expand and fill the available space in the main axis of a row or a column. So in here, for the container 1, width is 100 and the container 3 width is 100. So for the container 2, it will expand as much as the parent size is available. Flexible widget has a flex and fit property. The difference between expanded widget and flexible widget is flexible does not require the child to fill the available space. Let's check the code to understand better. In this code, I use flexible widget for all containers and use flexFit.loose. The fit property is the main difference from expanded. If you compare the codes between the flexible widget and expanded widget, the major difference that you will notice is flexible widget can use flex and fit property to shape or position your child widget inside a row or column. Here it uses flex properties. By using this, flexible widget resizes its widget according to parent size. Let's think parent container has the 5 columns. So we give the 3 to the flex property. So the container 3 will have the 3 columns as a width. And so container 2 will have the 2 columns of the parent container. And container 1 doesn't have the flex, so default will be the 1. That's all for the expanded and flexible widget. And if you compare to the expanded and flexible widget, so expanded widget doesn't have the flex and fit properties. So it will divide it equally for all their children. And flexible has the fit and flex properties, so you can have the control your properties under your children. The next title is Handling Portrait and Landscape Orientation. For this case, we can use orientation beta. This widget is useful if we change the UI based on the orientation of the parent widget. It obtains the orientation data by comparing the width and height of the parent widget. So in this example, we call the orientation beta, and inside it, if the orientation is portrait, then we will return 2 columns. If the landscape, then we will return the 3 columns. Next, we are going to see a real use case of orientation beta. Let's say there are 2 screens, fragment A and fragment B. In our mobile phone, the screen size is only available for 1 screen. What I want to do is, if I click on fragment A, I will go to fragment B and fragment B will be shown on the screen. But in a tablet, I want to calculate if there is enough space to show both fragments. If there is, then I will show both screens side by side. So how do we do this? If we want to use the same logic as I showed in the previous example, we check if the screen is in portrait mode and construct a particular layout if that is the case. If not, we construct a horizontal layout for the screen. Page vertical layout and page horizontal layout are methods I have written to create the respective layout. We can also check the orientation at any point in the code, inside or outside of the orientation beta, using orientation.portrait. And there's also another way to do it. All we need to do is define 2 widgets, one for fragment A and one for fragment B. We simply check the device has enough width to handle both widgets. If it does, we show both widgets. If not, if the device does not have enough width to support both, we only show the fragment A and navigate to a separate screen to show the fragment B. We first need to check the device width. To get the width, we use media_query.size.width. The size gives us the height and width of the device in dB. Let's set the minimum width to 600 dB for showing fragment B. If the screen is large, we add fragment B, and if it is not, we return an empty container. We use the expanded widget around it to fill the screen or divide the screen into proportions in case of a larger screen. So expanded allows each widget to fill half of the screen or even a certain percentage by setting width as we want. So this is all for my presentation, and thank you so much for listening. If you have any question, I would be happy to answer.
Thanks, Sue. I think you have a fan, someone Harsh on YouTube commented, "Hey Sue, you go."
Yeah, it's my teammate.
Oh, nice. Hi, Harsh. Thanks for joining us today. Yeah, I think we have a question. Jelma asked, what if we wrap scaffold with safe area?
Scaffold has to be the first widget of the first widget of the application. So you cannot use any widget above the scaffold. Yeah, then you will have the error.
Yep, we hope that answer your questions. And then we have a question from registration as well. So you mentioned that you are an Android engineer, but you also learn Flutter. So for all the Android developers out there, should they learn Flutter?
I think I will answer it from my personal experience. So when I was working, before I learned the Flutter, so when I do my own project or something, then I want to release to the Play Store, and then I also want to release to the App Store, right? But I don't know how to write the iOS. So I learned the Flutter, and yeah, so Flutter is you just need to write one and you can publish the two application. So I think that's great. And another one is I don't recommend the Flutter for the really big project, because Flutter is using the native library for example, camera or mic, using the mic, or so like you want to do something, but there's no library for it. Then you have to write your own library. So yeah, and if you want to really have to control your application, like you want to control everything, then Flutter is not for it. So you can use the Flutter for only the showing simple simple operation, like showing the data or like connecting the small things. Then it should be okay. Yeah.
So like trying out things, smaller projects, maybe Flutter is a bit more suitable.
Yeah. For normal project, Flutter should be okay. Flutter is a really wide network, so there is a lot of library you can choose from. But what if you want to do something there isn't library? Yeah, then you have to start everything over again.
Nice. Yeah, thanks a lot for answering that. If you have any more questions about Flutter projects or what Sue shared, feel free to share it in our comments, and Sue will be able to answer them there as well. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Sue. And let's move on to our third speaker for the day. So our third speaker is Shang. Shang is no stranger to our community. He's a software engineer at work and a hobbyist by night. He's also a Google developer expert in Firebase. And in his own words, sometimes he gets distracted by random stuff, ranging from DIY projects to memes. So today he'll be sharing about the challenges Hubble, a construction tech company, faced and how it improved its mobile development team productivity with various tools, including Firebase distribution. Over to you, Shang. Shang, you are on mute.
Hi everyone. Yeah, thank you for that, Yasin. Let's go right ahead. So I'm Shang. Today we'll be talking about how Hubble, which is the place I'm working at, how we improve our mobile development productivity with various tools, including Firebase app distribution. So let's go through a few things that we're going to talk about today. So background. So some of you might know or might not know, Hubble is one of the new leading startups in Singapore that deals with digitizing the construction industry. So one of the few projects that you may have heard of is the Changi Airport, the Jewel Changi Airport. So yeah, the construction company that is building the Changi Airport, the Jewel part of it actually uses Hubble to manage their operations. So in Hubble, I myself as a I'm taking the lead in the mobile development team in Hubble. So this is one of our new apps that is meant for our construction workers as well as project owners and stuff like that. So this is called our Hubble app, that is a super app that contains a lot of different modules for various aspects in the construction workflow, ranging from safety inspections to quality to fabrication, etc. So this is a one-stop app for everything. So my team itself consists of 4 people. So 4 of us are developers. We work on various modules as mentioned earlier on. And we have a few QA engineers and a product owner. So the tech behind it is that we are running on React Native. Yeah, we are not running on Flutter or Xamarin or natively, but it's actually built on React Native. We built different flavors since we need to do a lot of testing and cater for different groups in our organization. So yeah, that's particularly basic it. Our source control is GitLab, which most of you should be familiar with it. So let's go through some of the workflows that Hubble has used before and how we have improved on this workflow further down the line when we slowly get bigger and slowly get more complicated challenges. So in typical startups or small companies, we tend to build features when we need to. And of course, as developers, we do our testing. Once all our testing is completed, we open a merge request back to the main branch. And then once that's done, we continue working on other features as well. But halfway through, sometimes we get requests from QA because QA now wants to do some testing on the features they built, right? So what the devs need to do is to stop their development at the moment and do a build themselves. So this is before we had any sort of automation kicked in. So we had to build everything on our local machines because simply it is faster, it is easier to do it rather than building the entire pipeline to support that. So the developers will just follow what QA requests for a build. So we will just honor that request. And then once the build is completed, we just continue working on other features and continue testing and following the usual requests. But sometimes we have other stakeholders who ask for a build as well. For example, the project manager now wants a build for maybe an experimental feature that he wants to demo to clients or to show other stakeholders these are some of the upcoming features that you want to show off, but it's not ready for production yet. So now developers are burdened with the task to actually build that particular set of features, experimental features, experimental builds out and send it to the PM. So as you can see from this workflow, is actually very disruptive to developer productivity because what we want to do now is we want to focus on building features and getting it out of the door and keep going forward with that. So we say, okay, we will build it for you, but actually we don't really like doing it all the time. So with this workflow, it comes with a set of problems. So one of the few things that I'm sure a lot of you will relate is that it's still building, right? So when someone requests for a build and you have to build it on your local machine, you can't really do anything else because it takes up all of your resources. And you would tend not to actually try to modify any code while the build is running on your computer because mainly you don't want to introduce an intended change. Imagine you're working on a piece of code and at the same time you're building a copy for QA to test. You might accidentally commit or check in or save these codes that will tend to cause the build to fail or might introduce intended changes. Another thing is that it can be a security risk as well, since these builds that you want to issue to production as well, everyone now has a copy of the same private keys to sign the app. So the other issue, of course, that we will have as developers is that you are getting bothered all the time, right? I'm sure a lot of you relate to this as well. Nobody likes getting bothered while we're in the zone. So you're just working on your code, and then suddenly people start pinging you everywhere to give you to create a new build for them. Someone from QA, someone from sales, someone from this and that. So it kind of disrupts your flow of thinking, right? At the same time, we also want to make sure those versions don't conflict with each other. So now you need to manage the versions yourself. You make sure you update the correct version numbers in your app, version codes as well. So all of this is all the extra overhead that you need to work on outside of your development time just to build a feature, right? So now your development time is impacted. Another thing is that since many people has been asking for a build, in our case, and different versions of the build, it can get messy. It tends to get messy over time. So end of the day, you might not know which build has which feature. Someone will come and ask, hey, what build, what features does this contain? Does this contain that and that? So now you have to figure out what does that build have. And sometimes if it's too hard to find out, all you do is just rebuild another copy, which again can be wasting time as well. And with the same thing, you will also get the problem where you don't really know what's inside the feature, right? So all of this can be an issue. And since everyone is building on their machine, so there tend to be things like it only works on my machine, or it worked on my machine but it doesn't work on the other machine. So what happens, imagine you're building you're working on some projects halfway, and now you need to build, but the build has failed. Did it fail because of your changes, or did it fail because of your teammates' changes? So suddenly your app is not buildable, and this can be a problem. Now you have to spend time debugging which commit actually broke the build. And now if you have new devs onboarding, right, you have a new teammate joining you and he now wants to run a build on his own, now he can't because it's broken. So it can be a serious issue. Another challenge that Hubble faces is that we have different environments, right? I'm sure a lot of companies have the same thing as well. We want to have a demo environment where we showcase some new features for potential clients. We have a test environment for testers to test on. We have our production environment as well. And all of these apps has to be sitting on the same device. So they are exactly the same app, just running on different set of features and different set of APIs. So we need a way to actually get them all in one device. So let's take a look at some solutions that we have. So the first solution we have is to actually, we can actually handle the multiple environments by using product flavors for Android, and iOS, we use iOS schemes and build configurations. So we know that mobile apps technically is run by a unique bundle ID, right? So for example, com.example.app1 or app2. So in order to have multiple apps in one device, we have to make sure that the the bundle ID or the stuff, it has to be different. So what we do is that we don't want to hard code these values and have different, and then you have to keep changing them all the time. So what we do is that we just use Android product flavors to help you out with that. So what we do is that we just apply an application ID suffix. And so now it's com.example.dev or com.example.test, like this. So once you have done with your product flavors, Android actually, Grader actually generates those new scripts for you for these flavors. So imagine you want to now run a demo build. All you need to do is Grader W and then your assemble demo release, which builds a release version for the demo environment. So for iOS, it's pretty complicated. So it has to do a lot with your iOS schemes as well. So it's a bit more challenging than that, but it can be done as well. So the other problem which we showed earlier on was the app was still building, right? So of course we wanted to move out away from developers building on their own machine over to some sort of automation. In this case, we were thinking of using Fastlane. So what Fastlane does is that it allows you to automate tasks for your mobile apps. So all you need to do is just install Fastlane, and we added a few plugins together. We added a few ways to increase the version number and version name. So every time we release a new version, we increase the minor value. So we're using semantic versioning. So for example, version 1.0.0 becomes 1.1 for every major release. And patch, you increase the patch number, which is 1.0.1, for example. So we automate this entire process so that the developers now don't need to figure out what was the previous build number, and now they have to increase it manually. So here's an example of how we run it. We just, on the pipeline, we just run the bump just increase the version by 1 every time you need to do a release, and it automatically changes your version code, your version name, especially for your Android, but for iOS, it will change your info.plist to include those details as well. So this entire process can be automated for you by using Fastlane. So we wanted to solve another issue where we don't want to keep building for the QA, or QA doesn't need to keep asking us for builds. We have a nightly build that runs every night. So as long as the code has been merged and tested, it runs every night at 8. And here we can actually set different version names if you want to. And this allows developers to focus on the development rather than actually using their machines to build. So for Android, we're just using the React Native Community Docker Android image. For iOS, we delegate it to Bitrise. So a very simple approach would be something like this. We do our linting since it's React Native, so you have your JavaScript as well. And then we run our build and deploy for each environment, for each platform, I mean. So here we can see that we actually we solved a lot of problem here. One is to deal with a lot of the build automation issues. So now all we have left is this in a gap where how can QA actually get the APK or the IPA files that has been built for the users. So here is where Firebase app distribution comes in. We want to be able to automate the deployment. So in order to do that, we use Firebase app distribution. What does it do? It allows you to release pre-production versions of Android and iOS. So rather than you sending APKs on Google Drive or sending through Slack or sending through some other forms, you actually can just upload it on the Firebase app distribution, and your testers or whoever needs to do can just download it from there. They don't have to bother you so much. So here's an example of the app distribution in the Firebase console. You can just go to your Firebase console and take a look at it. Here are some examples of the apps that we are releasing. So these apps are built nightly, every night. So the version code they're using at the moment is just the build pipeline, so that we know which pipeline is the one that builds it. And in app distribution, you can actually set the type of testers and groups. So imagine you only want demo users to be informed there's a new build. You can create a new group called demo users, and then add your colleagues' email addresses inside. Or you have set a group of testers that you can create a group, and you can attach it to the particular app itself. So every time a new distribution happens, these testers will be notified immediately when there's a new build. So here's an example on your Android phone. You open the App Tester app, and this is one of them. And if you take a look at the bottom, we include release notes as well. So you can actually add release notes to the app. So now the QA doesn't need to be bothered to figure out what features are already included in. So all they need to do is just search for the Jira ticket if you're using Jira, or any sort of way for you to track your commits or track your features or bug fixes that you've done. So with that in mind, our previous workflow can be easily fixed. We no longer need, we already offload the process of building and deploying from the developer to Firebase app distribution and through your automated pipelines. And all the developer needs to do is that if QA needs a build middle of the day and it's not present, all you need to do is just press a button, and that's it. You can just continue working on your features as normal. So I'm sure this is much faster compared to our previous workflow. So let's take a look at some ways you can actually distribute your app that has been built, right? So once the pipeline has finished building your app, there are a few ways you can actually distribute it to app distribution. One way is to do it manually through the Firebase console. So all you need to do is just drag and drop your IPA or your APK in, and then just select your testers and groups and add in your release notes, and then they should get an email to download it. So this works pretty well for manual distributions, but since you're running on a pipeline, right, why don't we also automate this as well? So this is where Firebase app distribution allows you to do that through the Firebase CLI. So you can make sure that you install the Firebase CLI in your pipeline machine, and then you can just easily issue a command to distribute as such. So we are distributing what you want, the IPA or APK. This is your Firebase app ID and release notes if you have, and what group should receive this new distribution. If you don't like using the CLI and you already have Fastlane integrated, then I would suggest you to use Fastlane, and there's a plugin for Firebase app distribution as well. All you need to do is to install the Firebase app distribution plugin for Fastlane and set up as before your app ID and the groups and release notes. And that's pretty much it, how you can distribute it. So here's an example of how you would use Fastlane to distribute an app. So you just run Fastlane distribute Android, and you just put in your details, and that's pretty much it. So here's an example of what happens if the distribution is successful. Everything's get uploaded automatically, and you're pretty much done. Now, Firebase app distribution also supports Crashlytics. So what does this mean is that in case, let's say you finish building a feature and then now you run the automation build, right? And now QA is running some sort of test and it fails. So those kind of crash failures can be immediately recorded on Crashlytics, and it will tell you which app failed, right? So if you send a new distribution on the demo environment, then Crashlytics can inform you that, hey, something on demo actually broke, and you're able to identify exactly which version that broke, and you can fix it accordingly, rather than imagine your QA now tells you something's broke, but you don't really know which version that you have distributed to the user that broke. So this is a pretty cool integration as well. So in summary, we talked about two different things. One is the build pipeline to automate your entire build process for mobile apps. And we also have Firebase app distribution. Now, them alone itself are pretty great, but when combined together, they help you in a lot of ways, right? So build pipeline helps you simplify your build process, delegate builds to the pipeline instead of the developers. And it is able to transition those builds over to Firebase app distribution so that your testers, your stakeholders, different groups of people who need to use that is able to download the Firebase app, the copy of the app without the developers' interference. So with this approach, Hubble has managed to increase our developer productivity. We are no longer building copies through our machine. Everything is done through the pipeline and Firebase app distributions. And QA now and the sales team, the best is that they don't bother us that much to ask for a new build. All they need to do is just go to check the emails or go to the Firebase console and check it out themselves. So I think that's it. Hope you'll enjoy. Here are some links that you can read more about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Shangi. Yeah, it does seem like you saved the team a lot of time through this project. We have a couple of questions from people tuning in. So Wen Long asked, is this Firebase app distribution free to use in Firebase console?
Yep, it's totally free to use.
Nice. That was a very quick answer. So yeah, go ahead and try it out. And then Jerma asked as well, is it possible to get the pipeline example? Not sure if it's included in the links on the slide that you're showing now.
Pipeline example, not really.
GitHub repo, for example.
Unfortunately, we don't have one, but since you're running on React Native, all we did was just you can go to React Native documentation. There is a section where you can build the app for distribution. All we did on our end was just to automate that on GitLab. Yeah. And I think if you're working on iOS, you can take a look at Bitrise. Bitrise, I think they have documentation how you can actually build your pipeline there as well.
Nice. Yeah, we hope that answers your question. Jerma also said, this is a very funny presentation. I think all your meme, the time you spend looking at memes paid off. I think this is one of the presentation that has the most number of memes that I've seen. Yeah, thanks a lot for. Okay, there's another question. Aslan, how better is it compared to Expo?
In my experience, I usually eject out from Expo the soonest. Reason being is because we use a lot of native libraries, or we want to make modification to native libraries that Expo would not allow. For CI/CD, there isn't really much a difference. If you're using Expo, go ahead. You can still build your native versions of your app. Yeah, it's more on for us, it's more on the dependency management and whether or not we are locked into Expo that was our primary concern, whether we want to eject out from export or not. But for CI/CD wise, export is not an issue.
Nice. Yep. I think that's all the questions we have for now about the presentation. If you have any more, feel free to leave them in the chat. Shang will get to them later on. And I'm going to add Sue back into our stream because we have one question. So let me just add her quickly. Hi, Sue. So there's a question for you. Keith asked, currently, the person is having problem with white spaces for screens that have large screen height. So new phones like Galaxy S21 Ultra, iPhone Pro Max. How do you handle this issue?
For this one, I need more information, like what kind of white spaces it means. So I will assume the saturation. Maybe the widget he wants to show is really small and the screen size is so large, so it will have like more space left at the bottom. So in that kind of saturation, then as I show in my slide, we can use the expanded. So the children widget will be expanded as much as the screen width and size, width and height. So yeah, there will be no more white space. I hope it can answer. Yeah, because I don't know the saturation, what kind of saturation. Yeah.
Yep. Akif, let us know if that answered your question. Hope that was helpful. And as I will be wrapping up today's session. Thank you so much, Shu and Shang-Yi, for joining us. I'll be moving you folks to the backstage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, and thanks everyone for joining La Kopi today. If you missed out on any of the speaker session and you'd like to rewatch it, don't worry, it's still available on our Facebook and YouTube channels, and the speaker presentation slides will be uploaded on our website in a couple of days' time. You can also stay connected with us by following us on our social media channels and also being part of our mailing list. And lastly, do let us know what you think about today's event. We want to hear how we can do better and improve. So you can scan this QR code or click on the link. I'll be sharing it in the chat shortly. And meanwhile, stay tuned for our upcoming events on our website and social channels. And we'll see you again at La Kopi next month.